The gunshot cracked through the morning air like thunder, sending the schoolchildren diving under their desks as Maverick Thorne's black stallion reared outside the window. Miss Delphine Hartwell pressed herself against the classroom wall, her heart hammering as she watched the notorious Cowboy holster his smoking Colt with deadly precision, but he wasn't shooting at people, he was shooting at the rattlesnake coiled near the school steps, its headless body now twitching harmlessly. In the dust. "You young ones can come out now," Maverick called through the window, his voice gravelly from years of trail dust and whiskey. "Snake's dead." 7-year-old Juniper Clemens peeked over her desk, her freckled face pale with terror. "Miss Hartwell, is the mean man gonna hurt us?" Delphine's throat went dry. Every soul in Willow Creek knew Maverick Thorne's reputation, the fastest gun in 3 territories. A man who'd killed 12 men in fair fights and God knew how many more in unfair ones. He'd ridden into town 6 months ago like a storm cloud, taking up residence in the abandoned cabin on Skull Ridge, and decent folks crossed the street when they saw him coming. "Stay inside, children," she whispered, but her curiosity betrayed her. Through the glass, she watched Maverick dismount and kneel beside the dead serpent, his massive frame moving with surprising gentleness as he used a stick to drag the carcass away from the school entrance. That's when she saw them. 3 small figures emerging from behind the oak tree, where they'd obviously been hiding. The Kowalski children, whose father had died in a mining accident last winter. Their mother worked 14-hour days at the laundry just to keep food on the table, which meant the kids often missed school. "You 3 shouldn't be wandering around during school hours." Maverick's voice carried no threat, only mild concern. "Can't go to school, 8th-year-old?" Dmitri mumbled, scuffing his bare feet in the dirt. "Mama says we're too stupid to learn anyway." Delphine's heart clenched. She tried to convince Mrs. Kowalski to send the children back, but the woman was convinced her offspring were too damaged by their father's death and their poverty to benefit from education. "That's hogwash," Maverick said firmly. "Every child can learn if someone takes the time to teach them proper." He reached into his saddlebags and pulled out something that made Delphine blink in astonishment. A worn copy of McGuffey's First Eclectic Reader, its pages soft with handling. "Can you read this word?" he asked, pointing to something on the page. "CIT," little Helena spelled out slowly. "Cat." "That's right, darlin'." Dog. Maverick's scarred face broke into a smile that transformed his entire appearance. "You're smart as a whip. All of you.
Oh.
Don't let anyone tell you different." Delphine pressed closer to the window, hardly believing what she was witnessing. The most feared man in the territory was conducting an impromptu reading lesson with 3 abandoned children, his patience infinite as he helped them sound out simple words. "Now then," he said, closing the book gently, "you 3 should be getting on home before your mama worries. But if you want to practice your letters, you come find me tomorrow morning. I'll be here bright and early." "Really?" Dimitri's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, a promise is a promise." As the children scampered away, chattering excitedly about their lesson, Maverick stood and dusted off his leather chaps. His pale blue eyes swept the schoolhouse windows. And for a heart-stopping moment, his gaze met Delphine's through the glass. Instead of the cold killer's stare she expected, she saw something that stole her breath: loneliness. Deep, aching loneliness that mirrored her own. He touched the brim of his hat in a polite salute, mounted his stallion, and rode away without another word, leaving Delphine staring after him with her entire worldview crumbling like a house of cards. The next morning, Delphine arrived at school an hour early, driven by a curiosity she couldn't name. The autumn mist clung to the valley like a secret, and through it, she could make out a familiar silhouette sitting on a tree stump near the creek behind the schoolhouse. Maverick Thorne sat with his back to her, the McGuffey reader open in his massive hands, 3 small heads clustered around him like chicks around a mother hen. His deep voice carried on the morning air as he helped Helena sound out the word house. "Oh, see," she repeated carefully. "Perfect. Now you try, Dmitri." Delphine crept closer, hidden behind the spreading branches of an ancient willow. She saw made her breath catch in her throat. The notorious gunfighter had somehow procured not just books, but slate boards, chalk, even a small wooden crate that served as a makeshift desk. He'd created a complete outdoor classroom. Miss Delphine's probably wondering where we are, little Stefan said, glancing toward the schoolhouse. Miss Delphine's a fine teacher, Maverick replied. But sometimes a person needs to learn in their own way, in their own time. It doesn't make them less worthy of learning. Why do you know so much about reading? Dmitri asked, with a child's blunt curiosity. Maverick was quiet for a long moment, his scarred hands gentle on the book's worn pages. My mama taught me before she died. Said education was the one thing nobody could ever take away from you. No matter how poor you were or how far you fell. What happened to your mama? Helena whispered. Cholera took her when I was 12. Been on my own ever since. His voice carried old pain, carefully controlled. But she made me promise to keep reading, keep learning. Said someday I might need to teach someone else. Delphine felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been so quick to judge this man based on his reputation, never thinking to look beneath the surface. Can you teach us to write our names? Stefan asked. Eagerly. Of course I can. Here, watch how I make the letters. ... For the next hour, Delphine watched the most patient, gentle teaching she'd ever witnessed. Maverick praised every small success, encouraged every stumble, and never once raised his voice or showed frustration. When Helena struggled with the letter S, he took her small hand in his calloused one and guided it through the motion until she got it right. You're natural teachers, all of you, he told them finally. Reading's just talking on paper. You all know how to talk just fine. As the children gathered their things to leave, promising to return the next morning, Delphine made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She stepped out from behind the willow tree. Maverick went perfectly still at the sound of her footsteps, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun before he recognized her. His pale eyes widened with something that might have been embarrassment. Miss Hartwell. He touched his hat brim, suddenly formal. Didn't realize you were there, Mr. Thorne. She clasped her hands to stop them from trembling. I couldn't help but notice what you're doing for the Kowalski children. They need someone to believe in them. His voice was carefully neutral, as if he expected criticism. As she said softly, they do. Just as you needed someone to believe in you once. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, hope, wariness all tangled together. Ma'am, I was wondering. Delphine took a deep breath, knowing she was about to cross a line that would change everything. Would you consider helping me with some of my other students? The ones who struggle with traditional methods? Maverick stared at her as if she'd sprouted wings. You want my help? In your school? I want to help children learn, Mr. Thorne, and it seems you want the same thing. She met his gaze steadily. Perhaps we could work together. The town council meeting erupted like a disturbed hornet's nest the moment Delphine finished speaking. Mayor Cornelius Wickham's face turned purple as a summer storm. While Mrs. Prudence Blackthorne fanned herself so vigorously, her elaborate hat threatened to take flight. Absolutely not, thundered Ezekiel Grimsby, the banker whose word carried weight in Willow Creek. That man is a killer, Miss Hartwell. It's a dangerous criminal. He's also the most effective teacher I've ever observed, Delphine replied calmly, though her palms were damp with perspiration. In 1 week, he's taught the Kowalski children more than they learned in 3 months of traditional schooling. The children of decent families don't associate with murderers, Mrs. Blackthorne declared, her voice sharp as broken glass. I won't have my precious Cordelia exposed to such ... such corruption. Delphine bit back her response. Cordelia Blackthorne was 16, spoiled, rotten, and hadn't opened a book since she'd learned to read her own name. The idea of her being corrupted by education was almost laughable. What exactly are you proposing? Mayor Wickham asked, clearly hoping to find reasonable grounds for refusal. A trial period. Mr. Thorne would assist with students who are struggling under my direct supervision, of course. He has a natural gift for reaching children who've been written off as unteachable. His natural gift for violence. More like, muttered Jeremiah Hawthorne, the blacksmith. Has anyone here actually spoken to Mr. Thorne? Delphine challenged. Beyond crossing the street to avoid him?
Oh.
Uncomfortable silence filled the room. These people had condemned a man based on stories and reputation, never bothering to see the truth for themselves. "I have," came a quiet voice. From the back of the room, every head turned to see Doc Beauregard standing near the door, his weathered face grave but determined. "Maverick Thorne saved my grandson's life last month when Tommy fell through the ice on Miller's Pond, dove in. Without hesitation, pulled the boy out, warmed him up, and rode hell for leather to fetch me. Never asked for thanks or payment." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was news to most of them. Furthermore, Doc continued, "I've seen him in town buying supplies. Always polite, always pays in full, never causes trouble. It's the only violence I've witnessed was when he shot that rattler threatening our school children. But his reputation," Mrs. Blackthorne protested, "is based on things that happened years ago. In other places, under circumstances none of us know." Doc's voice carried the authority of a man who delivered half the babies in town and buried their grandparents. "Maybe it's time we judged a man by his actions here and now, instead of his past." Delphine felt a surge of gratitude toward the old physician. "All I'm asking for is a chance. 1 month. If there are any problems, any concerns at all, I'll end the arrangement immediately." Mayor Wickham shifted in his chair, clearly torn between public opinion and the uncomfortable realization that condemning a man unheard went against his own principles. "This is highly irregular," he said finally. "So is teaching women to read, once upon a time," Delphine replied. "So is the idea that poor children deserved education. Sometimes irregular is exactly what's needed." The debate raged for another hour, but eventually, Doc Beauregard's testimony and Delphine's passionate advocacy won the day. The council agreed to a 1-month trial with strict conditions. Maverick would only work with struggling students, always under Delphine's supervision, and any hint of impropriety would end the arrangement immediately. As the meeting dispersed, Mrs. Blackthorne cornered Delphine near the door. "You're making a terrible mistake, my dear. That man will bring nothing but trouble to our peaceful community." "Perhaps," Delphine replied quietly. "Or perhaps he'll bring exactly what we need, someone who remembers what it's like to be judged, dismissed, and written off. Someone who won't give up on a child just because others have." Walking home under the star-scattered sky, Delphine wondered what she'd gotten herself into. She was risking her reputation, her career, possibly her safety, all for a man she'd barely knew. But when she remembered the gentle patience in Maverick's eyes as he taught those forgotten children, she knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't trusting a man with a violent past. It was letting fear prevent you from seeing his true heart. The first day of their partnership dawned crisp and clear, with frost painting the schoolhouse windows in delicate silver patterns. Delphine arrived early, her stomach churning with nervous anticipation. Only to find Maverick already there, sitting on the front steps, with a steaming cup of coffee and a stack of books beside him. "Morning, Miss Hartwell," he said, rising as she approached. His usual black leather had been replaced by clean brown trousers, a white shirt, and a simple vest, still unmistakably masculine, but less intimidating. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. I see you've prepared." He gestured to the book-sworn copies of readers, arithmetic primers, even a geography text. "Figured I should know what the children are supposed to be learning." Inside the schoolhouse, Delphine tried to ignore the way her heart hammered as Maverick moved through the space, his presence filling the room despite his obvious efforts to make himself smaller, less threatening. When the children began arriving, the reactions were as varied as she'd expected. The Kowalski children ran to him immediately, chattering about their practice with the slate boards he'd given them. Several of the younger students stared with wide-eyed curiosity, while the older ones hung back, uncertain. But it was Tobias Mitchell who posed the real test. Tobias was 11, large for his age, and had been held back twice due to what his father called stubbornness and what Delphine recognized as a learning difficulty that made traditional methods ineffective. He'd grown sullen and defiant, disrupting class and bullying smaller children out of frustration. "I ain't learning nothing." "From no killer," Tobias announced loudly as Maverick approached with a gentle smile. The room went dead silent. Delphine held her breath, waiting to see how Maverick would handle this direct challenge to his authority. "That's your choice, son," Maverick said mildly, settling into a chair beside Tobias's desk. "But before you decide, maybe you'd like to hear a story." "Don't want to hear no stories." This one's about a boy who thought he was too stupid to learn. Convinced himself that since words looked like chicken scratches on paper, he must be broken inside. Maverick's voice was conversational, unthreatening. So he started acting mean, pushing other kids around, making trouble. Figured if he couldn't be smart, he'd at least be feared. Tobias's scowl faltered slightly. Other children drifted closer, drawn by something in Maverick's tone. "What happened to him?" Lena asked. "Well, one day a teacher sat down beside him, not to scold or punish, but just to talk. Asked him what he saw when he looked at words." Maverick opened a book, pointing to a simple sentence. Boy admitted that the letters seemed to dance around, switching places, making no sense at all. Delphine's breath caught. She'd suspected Tobias might have word blindness, a condition she'd read about in her teacher's journals, but had never seen addressed practically. Teacher told him there was nothing wrong with his brain, just that it worked different. Like being left-handed in a right-handed world, needed different tools, different methods. Maverick reached into his pocket and pulled out a thin piece of red glass. Like this. He held the glass over the text and gasped filled the room. Through the colored filter, the black letters stood out sharp and still against the white page. "Try it." Maverick offered the glass to Tobias with suspicious curiosity. The boy held the filter over his reader. His eyes widened as words that had always seemed to writhe and shift suddenly held steady. "I can, ... I can see them clear," he whispered. "That's because you're not stupid, Tobias. Your brain just processes information differently. Makes you special, not broken." Tears leaked down the boy's cheeks as he read his first full sentence aloud. The cat sat on the mat. "How did you know?" Delphine asked softly. Maverick's smile was sad and knowing. "Because I was that boy, Miss Hartwell. Spent years thinking I was worthless until a traveling preacher showed me the same trick. Changed my whole life." The revelation hung in the air like morning mist. This feared gunfighter had overcome the same struggles that plagued several of her students. No wonder he understood their frustration, their anger, at a world that seemed determined to prove their inadequacy. "Can you teach me more?" Tobias asked, his voice small and hopeful. "Son, I'd be honored too." As Maverick settled in beside Tobias with the patient attention of someone who truly understood, Delphine felt her heart do something dangerous. She was falling for this man, not the legend or the reputation, but the gentle soul who saw worth in forgotten children and hope in impossible situations. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. 3 weeks into their partnership, Delphine found herself lingering after school hours more often than professional necessity required. She told herself it was to observe Maverick's innovative teaching methods, but a racing pulse whenever he smiled suggested deeper motivations. This particular evening, autumn rain drummed against the schoolhouse windows as Maverick worked with Jasper Fairfax, a shy 7-year-old who stammered so badly that other children often finished his sentences for him. Traditional recitation had only made the boy more self-conscious, but Maverick had discovered something remarkable. Jasper could sing without a trace of hesitation. Once upon a time, Maverick sang in his surprisingly melodic baritone. "There lived a little boy who loved to play with toys," Jasper continued, his voice clear and confident in song. "That's beautiful, Jasper," Delphine said, genuinely amazed. "I never knew you had such a lovely voice." The boy beamed, his usual anxious expression replaced by joy. "Mr. Maverick says singing is just talking with music clothes on." "Mr. Maverick is very wise," she replied, catching the gunfighter's eye. Something warm and electric passed between them, a moment of shared understanding that went far beyond teaching methods. As Jasper gathered his things and skipped toward the door, humming his reading lesson, Delphine found herself alone with Maverick for the first time since their partnership began. The rain created a cocoon of intimacy around them, the outside world temporarily forgotten. "You've transformed that child," she said softly. "In 3 weeks, you've accomplished what I couldn't in 3 months." Maverick was organizing books on her desk, his movements careful and precise. "You laid the foundation, Miss Hartwell. I just found a different door into the same room. "Please," she said impulsively, "call me Delphine. When we're alone, I mean." He looked up, surprise flickering in his pale eyes. "That wouldn't be proper. Neither is most of what we're doing according to the town council." She moved closer, drawn by an invisible force. "You've revolutionized my classroom, changed how I see teaching entirely. I think we've moved beyond strict propriety." "Delphine," he said carefully, as if testing the weight of her name. Dotted. "That's a beautiful name, like the flower, Alphinium. My mother loved gardens." She was standing close enough now to see the silver threads in his dark hair, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. "What does Maverick mean?" His smile was rueful, independent-minded, unbranded. "Fits, I suppose it does." Without quite meaning to, she reached up and touched that small scar. "How did you get this?" His breath caught at her touch, but he didn't pull away. "Horse kicked me when I was 15. I was trying to break a wild Mustang. Thought I knew better than everyone else." "Did you know better?" "About horses. Sometimes. About most things." He caught her hand, holding it gently against his cheek. "I'm still learning." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Delphine had never been this close to any man, had never felt this breathless, reckless longing. In the lamplight, Maverick's harsh features softened into something almost beautiful. "I should go," he said quietly, but made no move to step away. "Should you, Delphine?" Her name was a whisper, a prayer, a warning all at once. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." The boldness of her own words shocked her, but she pressed on. "I'm asking you to stop seeing yourself as the town sees you. Stop believing you're not worthy of ... of affection. I've killed men, in self-defense, to protect others. I've heard the real stories now, not just the legends." She stepped closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I've seen your gentleness with the children, your patience, your kindness. That's who you really are. The town would never accept. The town is learning. Slowly, perhaps, but they're seeing what I see." She took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "And what I see is a man worth loving." The words hung in. The air between them, like a bridge, neither could cross back over. Maverick's eyes widened, and for a moment she saw past all his defenses to the lonely, hopeful man beneath. "Delphine," he breathed, and then his hands were framing her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "Are you certain?" Instead of answering, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, tasting rain and coffee and something uniquely him. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as he pulled her closer, years of loneliness and longing pouring out between them. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. The world irrevocably changed. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "However impossible, however improper, I love you." "And I love you," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "God help us both. I love you more than life itself." Word of their courtship spread through. Willow creaked like wildfire in dry grass, igniting scandals in parlors and heated debates in saloons. Delphine faced the town's disapproval with chin held high, but the constant whispers and pointed stares wore at her like water against stone. "You're destroying your reputation," Mrs. Blackthorne informed her after Sunday service, her voice dripping with false concern. "No decent man will have you after this. Fatuation runs its course, and it's fortunate I've already found an indecent one who suits me perfectly," Delphine replied sweetly, earning gasps from the assembled church ladies. But it was the children's transformation that truly silenced the critics. Under Maverick's patient guidance, Tobias Mitchell not only learned to read, but discovered a gift for storytelling that captivated his classmates. Jasper Fairfax gained confidence with each singing lesson, his stammer all but disappearing. Even the Kowalski children, once written off as hopeless, were reading at grade level and helping younger students with their letters. The breakthrough came on a crisp November morning when Cordelia Blackthorne, spoiled, 16, and convinced the world owed her constant attention, had a complete meltdown during arithmetic lessons. "I hate numbers," she shrieked, throwing her slate to the floor. They're stupid and pointless, and I don't need them. Delphine felt her patience snap. Cordelia. That's quite enough, actually. Maverick's calm voice cut through the chaos. She's right. Every head in the classroom turned toward him. Cordelia stopped mid-tantrum, surprised by this unexpected support. Numbers by themselves are pointless, he continued, settling into a chair beside the shocked girl. But what if I told you that? Understanding arithmetic could help you figure out exactly how much fabric you need for that dress you're always sketching. Or how to calculate the perfect proportions for your watercolor paints. Cordelia's eyes widened. Few people knew about her secret artistic ambitions, dismissed by her mother as unsuitable hobbies. Really? Really? Here, let me show you something. Maverick pulled out a piece of paper and began sketching a dress design with quick, confident strokes. If you want to make this dress, you need to calculate yards of fabric, seam allowances, button spacing, ... all arithmetic. For the next hour, Cordelia Blackthorne, who had never willingly engaged with any academic subject, worked mathematical problems with eager concentration, discovering how numbers could serve her artistic dreams. He's a miracle worker, Delphine murmured to herself, watching the transformation. But miracles, she learned, often come with a price. That evening, as Delphine prepared to leave the schoolhouse, she found Mayor Wickham waiting outside with a grave expression and a telegraph in his hand. Miss Hartwell, I'm afraid we have a problem. The telegram was from the Territorial Marshal's office. Bounty hunter arriving Willow Creek stop. Seeking Maverick Thorne for outstanding warrant stop. Cooperate fully. What warrant? Delphine asked, her heart sinking. Something about a shooting. In Silver Falls 3 years ago, apparently there was a witness who recently came forward. Wickham's face was troubled. I'm sorry, Miss Hartwell, but the law is the law. Where is Mr. Thorne now? At his cabin, I assume? The bounty hunter fellow named Cactus Jack Morrison rides in tomorrow morning. Delphine didn't wait to hear more. She gathered her skirts and ran through the evening shadows toward Skull Ridge, her heart pounding with fear and desperate determination. Whatever Maverick had done in his past, whatever demons pursued him, she wouldn't let him face them alone. She found him sitting on his porch, cleaning his guns by lamplight. He looked up as she approached, and she saw that he already knew. Outward. Travels fast in small towns, he said quietly. We'll fight this. I'll get you a good lawyer. Prove your innocence. I'm not innocent, Delphine. His voice was heavy with old pain. I killed a man in Silver Falls, shot him dead in front of half the town. Her breath caught. Why? Maverick was quiet for a long moment, his hands still on the Colt. He was beating his 8-year-old daughter with a bullwhip, split her back open like a watermelon. When I tried to stop him, he went for his gun. Maverick. Self-defense and defense of a child should have cleared me, but the man had powerful friends. They twisted the story, made it look like murder. He met her eyes, and she saw years of running, of hiding, of believing himself beyond redemption. I've been running ever since. Then we'll run together. The simple words hung between them like a vow. Maverick stared at her, hope and heartbreak, warring in his expression. You'd give up everything? Your school, your reputation, your whole life? Delphine moved to him, taking his hands in hers. My whole life is you now. Everything else is just geography. Dawn broke cold and clear over Willow Creek, as Cactus Jack Morrison rode down Main Street, his black duster flapping behind him like vulture wings. The bounty hunter was exactly what Delphine had expected, lean as a whip, cold-eyed, carrying enough iron to outfit a small army. But what she hadn't expected was the crowd. Gathering outside the schoolhouse, every parent whose child had been touched by Maverick's teaching stood there in the morning. Miss Teven, Mrs. Blackthorne, who clutched Cordelia's hand with surprising protectiveness. Doc Beauregard stood at the front of the group, his medical bag at his feet, and his jaw set with determination. Where's Thorne? Morrison demanded, his hand resting on his gun butt. That depends, Doc replied calmly. What exactly are you planning to do with him? Take him back to Silver Falls to stand trial for murder. A funny thing about that, came a new voice. Marshal Pete Hendricks emerged from the crowd, his own badge gleaming in the morning light. I just received a very interesting telegram from Silver Falls. Morrison's eyes narrowed. What kind of telegram? Seems a deathbed confession came to light yesterday. A fellow named Buck Garrison finally admitted he lied about what he saw 3 years ago. Said he was paid to give false testimony against Maverick. Thorne Marshall Hendricks smiled grimly. Warrant's been dropped. Matter of fact, the territorial governor wants to thank Mr. Thorne for his service to justice. The bounty hunter's face went through several interesting color changes. Be righto, but it is. Delphine stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. And what's more, this entire town is prepared to testify to Mr. Thorne's character, his contributions to our community, and his exemplary conduct over the past months. He's taught our children things we never thought possible, added Thomas. Mitchell, Tobias's father. My boy went from troublemaker to scholar under his guidance. Saved my grandson's life, Doc Beauregard said firmly. Dove into an ice-cold pond without hesitation. He's been nothing but a gentleman and a credit to our town, Mrs. Blackthorne declared, shocking everyone present. My daughter has learned more in his classroom than in all her previous years of education combined. The hostile faces, clearly realizing his easy bounty had evaporated. This ain't over, he growled, but even he could see the futility of his situation. Actually it is, said a familiar voice. Maverick stepped out from behind the schoolhouse. His hands empty, his posture relaxed but ready. He'd heard everything, and the relief in his eyes was like sunrise after the longest night. I'm done running, he said simply. Done letting my past define my future. Morrison's hand twitched toward his gun, but found himself staring down the barrels of a dozen. Firearms held by the townspeople of Willow Creek. Even mild-mannered Mayor Wickham had produced a derringer from somewhere. I'd reconsider that if I were you, Marshall Hendricks suggested mildly. These folks seem mighty protective of their schoolteacher. The bounty hunter looked around one more time, spat in the dust, and rode out of town without another word. The crowd broke into cheers and applause, children running to embrace Maverick, adults shaking his hand and clapping his shoulders. But Delphine only had eyes for the man she loved, the man who was finally, truly free. So she said, moving to his side, what does a reformed gunfighter do with his life? Maverick's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close. I was thinking of asking the local schoolteacher to marry me. If she'll have a man with more past than future? It depends, Delphine replied, her heart singing with joy. Can this reformed gunfighter handle being married to a woman who's going to revolutionize education in the American West? With her as my partner? Lady, I can handle anything. The kiss that followed was interrupted by cheers from their students, by rice thrown by laughing townspeople, by the promise of a future none of them could have imagined just months before. 6 months later, the Willow Creek Educational Institute, founded by Mr. and Mrs. Maverick Thorne, welcomed its first class of teachers from across the territory, all eager to learn innovative methods for reaching struggling students. The Institute's reputation spread far beyond Colorado, drawing educators who wanted to understand how a former gunfighter and a small-town schoolmarm had revolutionized learning for children who'd been written off as unteachable. But on quiet evenings, when the last student had gone home and the lesson plans were finished, Maverick and Delphine would sit on their porch and remember the morning when a lonely teacher had looked past fear and reputation to see the gentle heart of a man. The whole town had avoided love. They learned. It wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections matched your own, whose strengths balanced your weaknesses, whose dreams aligned with yours like stars in the same constellation. And in the growing twilight, their children's laughter echoing from the schoolyard and their students' successes, painting the future bright with possibility. They knew they'd found something rarer than gold, more precious than reputation, more lasting than legend. They'd found home in each other's hearts.